Sis, how you just gonna pop up with a channel without even introducing yourself? Tell the people who you are. Hey, thanks so much for stopping by my channel. It's your girl Anitra here with Different by Design. Today's video won't be a fashion haul. Today's video is a story time video. I'm pretty much just going to formally introduce myself, kind of give you my personal testimony, and hopefully through that you'll be able to connect with Different by Design and everything that is Different by Design. So before this turns into me rambling, let's just jump right into my story. I think I'll start with, and hopefully, you know, through me telling my story, you guys can kind of relate and think back to times that you felt different, times that you've kind of, you know, struggled with these things, and hopefully, you know, you'll, even if, you know, it's no longer your struggle, you'll be able to help somebody else that's having difficulty embracing their different. Let me preface this by saying that I'm an early 80s baby, so thank you, Lord, that I grew up before social media. Social media actually didn't really get its start until, I would say, from my memory, there was Black Planet, and then there was, after Black Planet, there was MySpace. So that really didn't start until I was on my way out of college. So anything crazy that I did, any experiences that I had, anything like that, they didn't make their way to social media. So I can't even imagine what the kids today are going through, and just having to experience, and just the pressures that come with social media. But I'm thankful that that wasn't my story. Like I said, I'm an early 80s baby, and I've always struggled with that feeling of there's something different about you, but because you couldn't see an example of that, you tried to figure out ways to fit in with what you could see. And that had kind of been like my struggle as a child, as a teenager, as, you know, preteen. That was always my struggle. I grew up in a Christian household. My father was a minister before he passed away. I got saved at an early age. And although my father was a minister, like, I really didn't get the full-blown PK experience, because he passed maybe a week before I was supposed to start the 8th grade. So I didn't really have the whole PK experience, but I definitely had the sheltered church girl experience. My experience pretty much as far as like socialization and friendships, like I had friends in school, but I couldn't really hang like everybody else hung out. So going over to friends' houses and things like that, I wasn't really allowed to do. So I spent a lot of time in the house just figuring out ways to kind of entertain myself, especially because like I'm the only girl. Like I grew up with 2 brothers, so it was like they always had each other to play, but it was always just me. And so I spent a lot of time reading. Like I love to read, and I kind of felt like reading was like a way to kind of live vicariously through the characters in the book. So I love to read. I also love to write. Like in high school, my high school days were the days of the Omar Tyree Fly Girl, The Coldest Winter Ever, books like that. So because I love to write, I used to write stories, and that would fill up entire composition books, and I would pass them around to my girlfriends and kind of let them read them and kind of see their responses to the books. And so when one friend would get done with the book, they would pass it to the next friend, and kind of do it that way. And so I also used to love to draw. So a part of me was always creative, And a part of me always loved, even though I wasn't one of the girls who had the flyest and the latest in the name brand, I still like fashion. I used to love reading like Essence magazine, Ebony magazine. Just love to look at the beautiful brown faces, and just the fashion and things like that. Even though I didn't have the money for the latest, the freshest, the flyest, the name brand, I still enjoyed it. And so that also kind of motivated me to get a job so I could have my own coins and buy the stuff that I like. I couldn't wait to get my working papers. Like, I was just like, this whole just be in the house, everybody else is out chilling having fun, and you just got to be in the house. I was like, I can't do this. So when I got old enough to get my working papers, the first thing I did was I went to go apply at McDonald's. You know, when you get your working papers, it's only but so many jobs are available to you. So I started working at McDonald's, and then I was just like, okay, I like this getting my own money life. I'm going to get another job. So I went to go apply at the Gap, and I got that job too. So I'm just moving and shaking in high school with my 2 jobs, and I had the 2 jobs. It gave me an opportunity to get out of the house because I was working after school. So after school, I would go from school. I got a chance to kind of be around other people then. And then I got a chance to go and make money after school. And so that kind of gave me an opportunity. And I still was able to kind of have my church social life. So it was like a lot of fun for me. You know, going, things, you're a teenager or you're a preteen and you do things like go to the mall, go to the movies with your friends. Like, I really wasn't allowed to do that. So, like I said, I was sheltered. So a lot of my socialization as far as outside of school took place at church. And so I always kind of struggled with, okay, so I know I'm supposed to be different. I know there's something different about me. But what am I supposed to do with that? Like, my childhood experience, I was bullied, I was teased for being, plus size. What is skinny? Like, I've always been extra. Like, what is skinny? So I was teased for that. I was teased for being dark skinned. I was teased for being sheltered. I was called ugly a lot. And so a lot of that kind of played its part in me struggling with embracing myself, embracing being comfortable in my skin. Like, just that experience of, knowing that you don't quite fit and kind of feeling like who you are as a person just wasn't good enough and so I would say maybe high school is when I really wrestle with, okay, I want to live for Jesus, but how am I supposed to do this as a teenager? And the reason why it was so hard was because I grew up around a lot of older women, and I also grew up around a time where the notion was, even though I don't think it was done on purpose, the underlying teaching was you really couldn't know Christ unless you were older. Like, you really, like, your experience with Jesus really wouldn't come until you were quote unquote more mature, until you had more gray hair, and and I was Baptist, grew up in the Baptist church, and so that was kind of the underlying teaching. Like, so people at that time, like, my experience, their testimonies were always, I went out, did me, and then I came back when I was all beat up and bruised, and made a mess of my life, and Jesus picked me up and he turned me around and he placed my feet on solid ground and picked me up out the muck and mire. Like, that was everybody's testimony sounded that way. So it was like, you went out, you did life, you got married, you had your children, you drank, you smoked, you partied, you did your thing, and then somewhere around, I don't know, maybe like your mid to late 40s, 50s, you came back and you gave your life back to Jesus, and he pretty much did, kind of got you together, and now you in church and you're pretty much living as if everything you did in the past didn't happen because you found Jesus. And that was kind of like the reoccurring testimony that I heard as a child. So I kind of believed that, okay, well, maybe you don't have to live for Jesus as a young person. Maybe the goal is to kind of go out and do you, and then let Jesus find you. And then God, nicely told me, no, that wasn't the case. So, and it was just like, okay, well, if I want to live my life for Christ, how does that look as a teenager? How does that look as a young adult, where there really weren't many examples of that, around me? And, I feel like kids these days, they have it a lot easier, even though it's considered, still corny to some people. Like, they have it a lot easier. They have a lot more music options. They have a lot more entertainment options. They have a lot more preachers and teachers who kind of understand the importance of living for Christ, and being young and being on fire and being sold out for Jesus, and being able to translate that into everyday life. So it's not like church is over here and then Monday through Saturday is over here, and never the two shall meet. Like, they have people who show you how to apply the faith to your life, to everyday life, and how it's supposed to be lived out. And that people tried, but it never really quite connected. So like, Sunday was Sunday, and then Monday through Saturday was something else. And Sunday was typically the day where you can kind of come get your praise on and then go back to life. And so for me, I really struggled with, okay, well, how do you live out your faith as a young person and not be the corny cliche Christian, not be the corny kid, but like, either way, like I said, I was the corny girl, like, no matter what. So it was just like, I grew up around the time where, as far as music, like, it was either you was bumping gospel all the time. Like, that was my experience. Like, grew up, one parent, you could only listen to gospel. The other parent introduced me to like old school R&B, and that kind of helped me find my love of like 90s R&B. So it was always like there was this split. It was just like, it was Jesus or it was the world. Like, it was either you all in or you all out. And I mean, like, yes, that is how it is, but like, it was just always this, am I living two lives? Like, how do you do this? How does it connect? Like, that was my experience. Like, it was always kind of sort of separate. So just trying to find my place. And I think for me, one of the biggest parts of my faith journey happened. I was in high school. I was in, 10th grade is when it happened. I got asked to participate in this oratorical contest for my church. It's basically when kids from all over different churches in the area were asked to kind of write a speech, and they had to write the speech, memorize the speech, and then give the speech in front of the church, and then they would pick a winner, and then whoever won would go on to represent their church. And like, so there was like the local, and then it went on to basically the state. So the first time I did it, I was in 9th grade, and I came in 2nd place, and then I got asked to do it again, and I got 1st place. And at that time I was 14, and I was in the 10th grade. And so at that time, I kind of felt like God was trying to get my attention, like, this is what I want you to do. And so anything like a woman preacher, a woman pastor, no. I didn't want to be a pastor, didn't want to be a preacher, but the whole speaking thing, it was like, okay, this is fun. But because I didn't see any examples of it, like, women would come to church here or there, and they would be asked to come and do like the Women's Day service, but they could never get in the pulpit to give their message. They will always be given like the podium off to the side. If you grew up Baptist, you know what I'm talking about. There was the pulpit, and then there was the little podium at the bottom where they would give like the church announcements and read the bulletin. And so she would happily have to give her word from there, and she wasn't allowed in the pulpit. So I was just like, that type of treatment, I just didn't understand. It was also a time where, like, if a woman came and called herself trying to preach, like, people would literally get up and walk out of the service. And I saw that a couple times, and I was just like, I don't want to do that. It wasn't going down. So me hearing from God, or feeling like God was trying to get my attention, like, hey, this is what I want you to do, but the fact that I couldn't see it, I really didn't know what to do, really didn't feel like I could discuss it with anyone, because God didn't call women. So I pretty much spent a lot of my time trying to figure out how I could serve God in other ways. So I pretty much spent a lot of my time trying to figure out how I could serve, kind of use my gifts to serve God, like, in a career. So I would say from, let's see, the beginning of high school until, I would say, maybe 11th grade, like, I was in, what, my entire high school career, I was on the Health Academy track, and that's basically for anybody that wanted to be a nurse, a doctor, anything in the medical profession. Like, they were on that track. But I kind of knew by, I would say, maybe 11th grade that I really didn't want to be a doctor. I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. And I say that because as a teenager, I was a babysitter, and then at church I also helped out a lot with the Vacation Bible School, and it got to a place where I was able to kind of teach my own classes for Vacation Bible School. And then I also eventually started teaching Sunday school for kids, so it was kind of like, okay, this is working. Like, I can kind of see I'm good at this too. So maybe instead of trying to be a doctor, I should be a teacher. So my new goal was to become a kindergarten teacher. So, and I really didn't want to be a doctor, because I would say 11th grade, like towards the end of 11th grade, I was in this after school program for students who wanted to be in the medical profession. And one time they took us to the children's ward of a hospital, and it was just children, like breathing machines, children fighting cancer, just children, seeing children sick and not being able to play like the kids that I worked with at church, where I was teaching them, and they were excited and they were fun and they were able to, you know, energetic and vibrant, versus the children in the hospital suffering. I was just like, this is not for me. Even though I graduated from the program and I still have my lab coat with my name on it, like, I just knew that wasn't for me. But being a teacher, I was like, okay, let's try this. I could do that. And so I kind of figured, like, hey, I might as well serve God this way. I might as well become a teacher. And so my goal was, at that point when I went to college, was to become a kindergarten teacher. And I felt like there were so many children who came from, like, broken homes and who just had, like, these crazy childhood experiences. And so I could kind of set my classroom up to be in, you know, the place where they could kind of grow and discover and learn and feel comfortable and feel safe, and I could shine my light for Jesus that way. So while in high school, it was always my goal to go to college and to chase a different world experience. So I knew I wanted to go to a HBCU, like, that was my goal. And even though I was in a scholarship program that allowed me to go away for 2 weeks during my sophomore year of high school, and then for junior year of high school, I went away for 3 weeks. Those weren't HBCUs, but I went on 2 HBCU college tours, and I found a school that I just knew I had to go to. And even though I applied to 8 or 9 different schools and I got accepted to 8, I was still waiting for a letter from the school that I wanted. And once I got that letter of acceptance from the school that I really wanted to go to, the other 8 didn't matter, because that school was the furthest away from home. It was in the state that I wanted to be in. The college was a small college. It had, like, that homey feel. It was a Baptist university, and so like I couldn't wait to get away. My goal was to become this mover, shaker, career woman, so I couldn't wait to go and start my new life far away from home as possible. So I went into college with the goal of becoming a teacher, and so I would say got to college freshman year, did extremely well in my major. I got to do work study in the office of my major, got to do get to know the professors, got to know the dean of the major, got to know like all professors, everything like that. Did extremely well on the pre-praxis. I know the name of the test has changed since back when I was in school, but I did really well on the pre-praxis. I got the opportunity to take the reading and writing portion of the praxis test, too, but I never took the math section. But I would say, what is it? The end of freshman year, they sent out a letter to all the freshmen basically saying, hey, we know you enjoy living on campus. However, because the upcoming freshman class is pretty much double, possibly triple the size of your class, we're going to need all of you freshmen who are going to be considered upperclassmen to pretty much find your own place off campus and move. And so we can have space for all, or try to accommodate the freshman class that's coming in after you. So basically what happened was my girlfriends and I, we all kind of broke up in twos, and we decided that we were going to find apartments off campus so we could really live it up. And so the girlfriend that I chose, mind you, I had spent my entire summer hustling. I was working at McDonald's still. I was saving my money all summer. I had ideas in my head of how I wanted to decorate the place and what I wanted to do and things like that, how we were going to live and have fun and just be free college students. I got a call about a week before we were supposed to go back to school and move in, and she basically, you know, we had a nice little conversation, and then midway through the conversation she was just like, hey, I got something to tell you. And I'm just like, okay, what's going on? She's like, yeah, I'm not coming back to school. And I'm just like, what? Okay. And she told me that she was pregnant, basically, and she wouldn't be coming back. So that kind of left me in a strange situation. It's just like, okay, literally a week before you move in to this place, you don't have money to live on your own, and nor do you have access to anyone who has money to kind of support this life of you living on your own. So I've started to think about things like getting a job and trying to go to school at the same time. But, you know, I returned to school. I returned to Richmond, and I did live on my own in an apartment for my whole sophomore year. But again, towards the end of sophomore year, my mom kind of came to me and was like, hey, we can't keep this up. I can't afford your household and mine. So pretty much that meant I was going to have to, and because the school was still in a situation where they didn't have space to accommodate the upperclassmen, I would either, like, it pretty much left me with no other option other than to come back to Philly. And like, when I tell you, I felt like I was in a hot air balloon and somebody just went pop, and I just came floating on down. It wasn't even a float down, it was like a drop. Like, there was no lightly floating, it was just pop and fall. Like, that was my experience. And so it was just like, I never saw myself going to school at home. Like, my whole goal was, because I was so sheltered, was to get as far away from Philly as humanly possible and figure out a way to not have to come back to Philly other than to visit. That was my goal. And so, like, even looking for colleges, like, I never considered any schools that were close to home. Like, it wasn't an option. And so I would say maybe freshman year of college. I came back home to visit, and then I came back home for the summer, and I wound up in a relationship. And so I tried to do the whole long distance relationship thing, and it worked out. Like, they came and they visited,